Srimate Ramanujaya Ramha. A few days back near Hyderabad, a spectacular 216-foot high statue of Swami Ramanujacharya was formally consecrated and made open for public darshan. Now, suddenly, Swami Ramanujacharya and the Statue of Equality became trending topics online. And in those discussions online, I could see a genuine curiosity around who this saint was, who's well over 1,000 years old, and why is he suddenly relevant to us in 2022. Now, I come from a family that follows the Ramanuja Darshana or the Vishishtadvaita school of Vedanta, and in the past few years, I've been trying actively to study his life, his teachings, and do my best to apply it. And I would like to share in this video a few points about why he's even more relevant today, both in our material pursuits as well as in our spiritual pursuits. Now, who exactly was Swami Ramanujacharya? This great saint was born in 1017 AD in a small village called Sri Bhutapuri near Chennai. And he lived for a full 120 years on this planet. Now, he dedicated his entire life to uplifting millions and millions of people from the ignorance and illusion of the miseries of day-to-day life, or samsara as they call it. And he told them in the proper way approved by the Shastras as how we can lead a dharmic life on this planet, achieve success in this planet in leading a complete and full life full of purpose, and also what happens to the soul once this body is destroyed. Now, it is very important to note here that Swami Ramanujacharya did not preach anything new that he himself had dreamt up or invented. Rather, he took upon the most extraordinary difficult task of re-establishing the dharmic Vedantic way of living based on timeless Pramanas, our Shastras, which is the Vedas, the Smritis, the Itihas and Puranas. Now, all these Shastric texts are, while they are timeless, they are also very, very difficult for the common man to understand. And therefore, he interpreted these texts in a proper way based on the teachings given by his own teachers, and he showed that we can live these principles in our daily life through his own life's example. Now, the school of Vedanta that Swami Ramanujacharya re-established in his lifetime is known as Vishishtadvaita, and the followers of this Sampradaya are today known as Sri Vaishnavas, and the Sampradaya itself is known as the Ramanuja Sampradaya. Now, obviously, in order to do so, we must remember that he was no ordinary man. And in the Guru Parampara, it is well established that he is none other than an avatara of Sri Adisesha, the divine serpent who serves Lord Mahavishnu. Now, in many texts, for example, the Narada Purana, it has already been predicted that such a sage would come in this Kali Yuga, who is the avatara of Adisesha. For example, the Narada Purana says that in the first Yuga, Adisesha served Lord Mahavishnu. In the second Yuga, the Treta Yuga, when the Lord took an avatara as Rama, he took birth as Lakshmana to serve Lord Mahavishnu. And in the third Yuga, the Dwapara Yuga, when Lord wanted to take avatara as Krishna, Adisesha was already waiting for him on earth as his older brother Balarama. And in this fourth Kali Yuga, Sri Ramanujacharya is the avatar of Adisesha. Now, Sri Ramanujacharya took up sannyasa at around the age of 30 years and dedicated the next 90 years of his life completely in the service of mankind. Now, generally when we say sannyasi, the image is that of a person wearing saffron robes, one who's completely living the life of a recluse, maybe far away in a mountain or a monastery, spending most of his time in dhyana or contemplation, with very little connection to the material world as we know it. Quite the opposite in the case of Swami Ramanujacharya. Not that he was attached to the material world or anything like that, but as the leader of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, we must remember that he had about 700 important disciples who were also sannyasis, several thousands of common sishyas, many magnificent temples which were under his administration, like the Srirangam temple, the Tirupati temple, the temple at Tirunarayanapuram, etc., with untold divine wealth attached to these temples. Many kings were his sishyas, and he was the advisor to the kings. And each and every day, some or the other person would come to him with their problems, and he had to help those common people who were in great need of guidance. And more importantly, while he was going about his life in the most compassionate, non-violent manner, many violent attempts were made on his life by people who were jealous of his growing fame. He was poisoned, people tried to kill him, they tried to drive him out of his headquarters, etc. So, as we can see, Swami Ramanujacharya lived in very complex and challenging times. He had a large number of administrative responsibilities upon him, and he had millions of followers looking upon him for guidance. Now, in this backdrop, let us examine one very curious but important incident in his life, which will beautifully illustrate so many of his good qualities, and we can learn many lessons from that incident. One day, in the holy temple town of Srirangam in Tamil Nadu, Swami Ramanujacharya was walking along the banks of the river Kaveri along with his huge entourage of followers. Now, on the banks of the river in the sand, a few small boys were playing, and these boys were reenacting the scenes that happen every day in the Lord Ranganatha Swami temple. Now, out of mud and sand, these boys had fashioned a beautiful figurine of Lord Ranganatha reclining on Adisesha, and they had also made prasad out of mud and sand and offered it to the Lord Maid. Now, to their great delight, they noticed Swami Ramanujacharya passing by, and they asked this saint to prostrate at the feet of the Lord that they had made there and to accept the prasad made out of mud and sand. Now, to their utter joy, Swami Ramanujacharya, with a lot of childlike glee and a lot of spontaneous love for their enactment, fell at the feet of the Lord in the mud. It was a hot day, the sand must have been very hot, and he gleefully accepted the prasad given by the boys, also made of mud. Now, on the surface, when we look at this incident of Swami Ramanuja taking the prasad made out of mud, we might think that it's an act of pure bhakti and love, and that's what he is primarily known for today. But also contained within that is a great Vedantic truth. And we must remember here that these great saints, these great acharyas, lived a life as per a proper code that are laid down in our Shastras, and they did not do anything that was random or in contravention of the Shastras. Now, the first important Shastric point to note here is that the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Creator, is present in every atom, every particle, and in every sentient being in this universe as the indweller. Now, it does not matter if those boys had made a murti of Lord Ranganatha in the sand. Having made that and having thought of the murti as Lord Ranganatha himself, it had that special quality, and that was clearly seen by Sri Ramanujacharya. Now, the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita also very clearly says that it doesn't matter what humble offering you have to me, patram, pushpam, phalam, toyam, as he says, as long as you offer it out of love to me. So the boys were offered maybe a ball of sand as prasada to the Lord, but they offered it very sincerely and with great love in their hearts. It also is magically transformed, and this lesson from the Bhagavad Gita was equally demonstrated by Sri Ramanujacharya in this incident. Now, the second important lesson here, Swami Ramanujacharya is this towering personality, right? And this great leader who has millions of followers. And yet, in his life, in this incident, as in all other incidents which we can see, is that he did not impose his viewpoint or his position or deal from a position of authority. Now, in this particular case, he looked at the world through the lens of those small boys, and he was able to show them many important lessons through their lens in a way that they would understand. And in every incident in his life, it is seen that he looked at the world through the eyes of the person talking to him and told them in a way that they could understand, and showed them by his own personal example. He did not impose his views on anyone, neither did he expect anyone to follow him simply because of his position and his authority. The third important lesson here is that a good leader can only lead by his personal example. He cannot simply command his people, neither can he not practice what he preaches. Now, as I already said, in this particular incident, Swami Ramanujacharya is being followed by a large retinue of his disciples. Here was a golden opportunity in front of all of them to truly demonstrate what he stood for. For example, he demonstrated the Vedic principles, as I said. He demonstrated great compassion for those boys. He showed that he had zero ego, because when those small boys approached him, he could have easily shouted at them, ignored them, or given any number of reactions that we normal people would give. On the other hand, look at his reaction. With great joy, with great childlike spontaneity, he immediately fell on the hot sand, prostrated at the Lord Ranganatha figure, murti made in sand, and accepted the prasad made out of mud given by those boys. Now imagine the impact that would have had on the hundreds of followers looking at him at that point in time. So much so that today, even nearly 1,000 years after the incident happened, you and I are discussing this today. While in this video, I have focused on one simple small incident from Swami Ramanujacharya's life and derived 3 important lessons from it, there are many such life-altering events that happened in his life, and it would take a lot of time, and a lot of videos could actually be made on all those incidents. And we have not yet spoken about what a great institution builder Swami Ramanujacharya was, of how he was able to transform the lives of people by telling them what happens to the Atma after the body is destroyed and what happens to Atma in the life afterwards, and therefore how you should lead life here so that you can be even successful in the afterlife. We didn't speak about his great and almost divine scholarship of all the important works that he wrote, which helps us understand the Vedas and the difficult Shastras in a way that even the layman can understand. And one of his names is Sri Bhashyakara because he wrote important commentary on the Brahma Sutras called the Sri Bhashyam. So there is so much to learn from this great saint that it is difficult to choose one incident, but we chose this one because it was very interesting, but it also displayed so many of his great qualities. In the last 20 years, from the time I graduated from IIM Bangalore and began my career as a Fortune 500 employee to the time I quit the job and became an entrepreneur, I have by and large read a number of the Western classics on management like Lopez, Drucker, Jim Collins, Tom Peters, Stephen Covey, etc. And while I learned a number of lessons from them, of late as I evolve as an entrepreneur, particularly in the Indian dharmic context, I feel the strong need to learn from the unique traditions of India, from the great preachers of this land. And as I delve deeper into the works of Swami Ramanujacharya, I find that there are timeless lessons that we can learn, which we can immediately apply in our individual lives as managers and entrepreneurs, and also in building a successful team or an organization. Now, in the past few years, I have been pleasantly shocked and surprised by the incredible life lessons that are available to us from the works and the lives of the great Indian teachers like Bhagavad-Pada Adi Shankara, Sri Ramanujacharya, Sri Madhvacharya, and that we don't have to necessarily only look at Western management texts to understand how to excel at our work or how to become a good entrepreneur or a business owner. We had a lot of fun making this brief video about Swami Ramanujacharya, and we hope that this discussion sparked an interest in you to understand a lot more about the teachings of the great masters of this country like Bhagavad-Pada Adi Shankara, Sri Ramanujacharya and Sri Madhvacharya, and that after watching this video you go and read more about them, their life, their work and their teachings, and try and apply them in your own life. I will conclude this video with an invocatory shloka to Sri Ramanujacharya. Jo nityam achyuta padambuja yukma rukma vyamohatastat tirani trinaya mene asmadguror bhagato saheka sindhoho Ramanujasya charanam sharanam prapati. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and do drop your comments and feedback in the comment section below.